Beginning in 1963, Doctor Who, through a few caveats, is the world's longest-running science fiction program. The serialized adventures of the Doctor, an alien Time Lord who travels throughout both time and space, quickly became a cult favorite amongst viewers and a mainstay of both British television and public broadcast networks across the United States. Anybody watching this probably already knows the broad strokes of Doctor Who, but it's a good refresher considering we're almost 60 years from the original airing. One of the things that contributes to the show's longevity is the fact that the Doctor is portrayed as an alien, a Time Lord from the planet Gallifrey who, at the end of their life cycle, can regenerate. Of course, in real life, this means that we can hire new actors and create new portrayals of the Doctor. This is best seen in its first instance, where William Hartnell's first Doctor, who's a curmudgeonly Yoda-like figure, is turned into Patrick Troughton's second Doctor, a vaudevillian Mo Howard scamp who likes to travel the universe and get into trouble.
Maybe so, but we happen to be on the island. Oh my word!
The original series from 1963 to 1989 sees 7 Doctors, and the revival series beginning in 2005 going on to now sees the continuation of 9 to 14 at the time of this recording. Doctor Who's first episode, An Unearthly Child, was scheduled to air November the 23rd, 1963. Luckily, nothing completely earth-shattering and unprecedented happened the day before.
Nothing bad ever happens to the Kennedys!
Yeah, so there's a lot that happens with Doctor Who. And to get where we need to go, we're going to have to yada yada through about 25 years of history. This includes the first Doctor abandoning his granddaughter on post-apocalyptic Earth, the second Doctor's involvement with the Kennedy assassination when he worked for the CIA, not that one, the iconic tenure of Tom Baker as the fourth Doctor alongside his companion and tin dog K9, and the extremely troubled production history of the bold and brash sixth Doctor.
Villain! Murderer! Doctor! 1,000 guns on your head!
This leads us directly into the mid-1980s. To make a long story slightly less long, new BBC controller Michael Grade had it out for Doctor Who, disliking the program and sci-fi in general. The show's longevity wasn't helped by the negative reception to Colin Baker's portrayal of the Sixth Doctor, a flamboyant and arrogant portrayal of the character. This leads to a moment in real life very reminiscent of the 1995 docudrama Friday, where Colin Baker is unceremoniously fired on his day off.
To be a stupid motherfucker to get fired on your day off.
This leads us to Scottish comedy actor Sylvester McCoy, a man I met in real life and I am convinced he is a space wizard. Sylvester McCoy's portrayal of the Seventh Doctor leans more into the comic side, with a vaudevillian persona similar to the Second Doctor's, as well as the Fourth. Behind this comic persona lurks a master manipulator, a shrewd tactician, and a merciless opponent.
Do you think I would let you have control of the Hand of Omega?
Do not do this, I beg of you!
Nothing can stop it now!
Have pity on me!
I have pity for you.
15!
By Davros, it hasn't been pleasant.
The Seventh Doctor makes for a dynamic incarnation of the character, as he can go from friendly space clown to vicious and ruthless adjudicator in a split second. We cut now to 1988. Doctor Who definitely has an uphill battle, but is starting to get more positive attention. With this positive attention comes a toy line. The BBC licensed model railway company Dapol to make a selection of 3 3/4 inch figures. Despite being 3 3/4 scale the most popular of vintage toys, these aren't very well known here in America. So we're going to take a look at a few figures relating to the 7th Doctor's era, starting with the real McCoy. This is the first offering from Dapol's toy line, and it's a pretty strong one. The figure's a bit of a weird one when it comes to engineering and articulation, as it mixes the classic Kenner 5POA along with elbows and knees. Despite this though, it has a really great resemblance to Sylvester McCoy and his portrayal of the 7th Doctor. Dapol also released a second version of the 7th Doctor, this one wearing a brown coat instead of the grey coat. Outside of the obvious, it has some other paint detail differences, as well as some tooling differences. This is kind of where we see the quality control of Dapol fall off the rails, as it's no longer as lush and as detailed as the previous version. In addition to Sylvester McCoy, Dapol also released figures of the 4th Doctor Tom Baker, as well as the 3rd Doctor John Pertwee. These three are arguably the most popular of the classic Doctors. You can definitely see the differences of quality in the figures, whether that be the paint or engineering, but the 7th Doctor's a really fun and dynamic figure. I personally recommend getting the gray coat version over any of the others. But what's a Doctor without a favorite traveling companion? And in this case, we're looking at
Ace!
But there are 3 rules. 1, I'm in charge.
Whatever you say, Professor.
2, I'm not the professor, I'm the doctor.
Whatever you want.
And the 3rd? Well, I'll think up the 3rd by the time we get back to Perryvale.
Unfortunately, Ace is one of the weaker figures from the Dapol selection, with some shoddy quality control and some bad paint. One of the few positives this toy has is the fact she comes with her baseball bat, which is a much needed accessory to liven up a otherwise bland figure. It sucks that this figure is such a poor representation of Ace, considering she's a fun and bombastic character who's willing to go into battle with a Dalek with nothing but her baseball bat. One of the other things this figure actually does somewhat well is the fact that it translates a lot of the patches, pins, and buttons on Ace's jacket pretty faithfully. It's an admirable attempt at translating Ace from screen to toy, but is unfortunately just hampered by the limitations of the time and the low budget for the figure. But speaking of low budgets, Doctor Who wouldn't be anything without low-budget special effects, and with those come all kinds of monsters and aliens. We'll start first with the Cybermen.
Excellent.
Despite having some difficulties translating the human characters from screen to toy, the Dapol toy line actually shines when it comes to the monsters and aliens in the Doctor Who series. The figure is a great interpretation of the Cybermen design used in Earthshock as well as Silver Nemesis. The figure measures around 4 inches tall, which means it towers over most bad guys in any other vintage toy line. The only ones that can match it are the Cylons from Battlestar Galactica. It makes for a very imposing action figure and a perfect army builder. Even one Cyberman could probably take down an entire G.I. Joe or Action Force battalion. This is probably the only time I can mention this, but the Doctor Who budget was so notoriously low that the props and special effects departments really had to get creative. In the 4th Doctor's debut story Robot, the BBC props department actually used a G.I. Joe tank to fill in for a real one. Moving on from the cybernetic terrors that are the Cybermen, we see the Tetrap. This is a bipedal bat-like creature that is featured in, at least in my opinion, one of the worst Doctor Who episodes ever, Time in the Ronnie. This episode featured the introduction of Sylvester McCoy as the 7th Doctor and features a lot of really odd moments. The toy translates the Tetrap character design pretty well, but you've noticed he doesn't have any wings. This is because they're a separate accessory that you're supposed to sew or glue on. I've never seen this featured on any other vintage figure, so I've decided to keep them separate. The Tetrap's just essentially a big goofy monster, and that's okay. He pairs great with Cantina aliens or any other weird action figure that you have kicking around. The Tetrap is a good crowd filler, but let's head over to the main event. Arguably the most iconic part of the Doctor Who universe, Dapol provided us with Daleks. This in particular is the gold and white Imperial Dalek, a very regal representation of the character that we see in Revelation of the Daleks and Remembrance of the Daleks.
You are the Doctor. You are the enemy of the Daleks. You will be exterminated. Exterminate.
The Daleks have been popular ever since their introduction in 1963 and have been a mainstay of Doctor Who merchandise. Knowing how marketable they were, Dapol made tons and tons of Daleks, including the Black Renegades as well as the classic Grey and Blues. All of them feature unique tooling, as well as a pullback motor that's super fun and adds an extra layer of playability. Personally, I'd recommend if you get anything from the Dapol toy line, it'd be at least one of the Daleks. The Daleks are a little bit of a microcosm of Doctor Who in that they're a little goofy but also super fun and kind of badass all at the same time. So what adventures do Seven and Ace go on to make this toy line as endearing as it is? The 25th season of Doctor Who begins in 1988 with an absolute barn burner of a story, Remembrance of the Daleks. This is a story that'll get just about any Doctor Who fan excited. The story sees the 7th Doctor and Ace go back to 1963 to retrieve an artifact called the Hand of Omega, a Time Lord WMD that has attracted the Daleks. The Daleks are currently in a civil war between the Imperials and the Renegades and are looking for one option to wipe the other off the map. After this story arc, we go to the Happiness Patrol, where Seven and Ace make their way to a dystopian, almost cyberpunk future. The Happiness Patrol is one of my favorite stories, as it sees our intrepid heroes enter the very surreal world of Terra Alpha.
Impolite guests get to feel the back of my candy hand!
That may be, Candyman, but the last time we met you said you were going to kill me.
A place where the color pink is in vogue, unhappiness is outlawed, and people mysteriously disappear. Going from the far future in space to the terrestrial, we enter Silver Nemesis, a story arc that marks the final appearance of the Cybermen in the classic series. Once again, another Time Lord artifact, the Silver Nemesis is a monolithic statue and weapon of mass destruction that is now crash-landed on Earth. The Cybermen, a witch, and neo-Nazis all vie for control of it. This all sounds a little better than it actually is. Silver Nemesis is a little bland in my opinion, but the final story for this season is far from bland. It is the greatest show in the galaxy. That's not me hyping it up, that's just what it's called. Seven and Ace encounter killer clowns from outer space in the Psycho Circus. I'm sorry, the Psychic Circus. It's a lot better than the Kiss album or anything ICP ever put out. The circus is hiding a dark Lovecraftian secret, and the Seventh Doctor, along with his few companions, Ace, some hippies, and a werewolf punk girl, are the only ones who can stop it. The Sylvester McCoy era is one of my favorites of Doctor Who, and the Dapol toy line does a great job of encapsulating all the strange, crazy, 2000 AD and heavy metal influenced stories that came out in his time. Seeing as the Doctor is a traveler of both space and time, the Dapol Doctor Who toy line does a great job of fitting in with just about anything, whether that's classic Kenner Star Wars, G.I. Joe, or the extremely British Palitoy Action Force toy line. And until Marvel Legends puts out a 6-inch scale Death's Head action figure, this is gonna be the only way you can have the crossover between the Doctor and the intergalactic peacekeeping agent from the Transformers universe. The Dapol toy line might be a little bit of a mixed bag, but you can pick and choose some really great figures that can complement any collection. I'd recommend it for any vintage 3 3/4 inch fan, or any new Who collector who's interested in old school toys.